tickets I get, what we do is, since we're on a regular time, we want to try to get as many questions in as possible in the time to do that. We'll draw those out just on a random basis. So if your number's drawn and you have a question, ask it. If it's already been answered and you don't want to ask it, or you don't have a question, just pass, that's fine. So that just helps us keep things moving and helps keep things fair and dispersed. So everybody has the same opportunity to ask a question. So if for some reason you don't get your question asked in that process, at the end of the night, Brenda works in our office right here, and Scott Stratton, the district director. If you want to have something you need to ask and you didn't get it asked, then if you'll approach us afterwards, we'll give you our card and you can let us know what that is and we'll let you get an answer. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and keep this going since we're only, like I said, limited time. We're going to try and keep this for about an hour. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Carl.
Thanks, Scott. I want to thank all of you for taking time to ran through a great rainstorm today, and typical out here, as we all know, now we're ready to spring dry again. But we're certainly grateful to be able to see that. We've been very active, as I know many of you are probably aware. We just had some markup on the farm bill on Thursday. We were in committee till 1 o'clock in the morning, started again 7 o'clock, flew out from Washington, got into Denver last night, drove down to Pueblo, went out to the Vestas plant there, met with senior citizens, and we're over here in the distaff at the solar plant here in Alamosa, and grateful for you all taking the time to be able to be here today. We've got a lot of serious issues, as I know you all know. Bottom line for me is it's really about jobs and the economy. It's about being able to get people literally back to work in this country. We're sitting in the county with double-digit unemployment, and those are just the official numbers. When we factor in the real unemployment numbers, we are in the high teens in most of the counties in the 3rd Congressional District. We've got to be able to get America back to work. We're also facing a huge national debt in this nation. We're currently sitting at $15.8 trillion in debt. Before the end of this year, we will be at and may well likely exceed $16 trillion in debt in this nation. Simply unsustainable. A brand new baby born in Alamosa this morning was better than $50,000 is their portion of the national debt. The burden that is going to have on our young folks in terms of what type of America that they are willing to inherit, I think at this particular time we probably can't imagine. But it will be a very different fight. Because of that debt, we're seeing that access to capital has become a real issue for a lot of our businesses. The ability to be able to get those loans, to be able to go down and get those lines of credit, to be able to make an investment, to be able to grow a business, to be able to create jobs, to be able to keep employees actually working is a real issue that we've got to be able to deal with. We see in Washington, D.C., a government that is poised right now to continue to expand regulatory policy that is inhibiting our ability also to be able to create jobs. And I'll never forget one of the first town hall meetings that we held. By the way, I think this is our 41st town hall meeting since I took office a year and a half ago. Going through the 3rd Congressional District, one of the first town hall meetings was here in the Valley. Came down and we were meeting with a lot of potato farmers and brought up the question to them, and I was fully prepared for the issue that we always talk about in Colorado, water, to be able to be addressed. It wasn't water, it was the EPA. The impacts of that overreaching agency are stretching into the San Luis Valley. Now, do we all want clean air? Do we all want clean water? We do. That is not in question. But the overreach and regulatory policy of that agency is impacting us in a very direct way in our ability to really create jobs. And let me give you one example that we were able to impact directly. I chair in the Small Business Committee. We oversee energy, ag, and trade. That is my subcommittee that we oversee. We heard out of the Department of Labor that they were going to be putting through a rule that was effectively not going to allow our children to be able to work on the family farm. We called our hearing to be able to address that. The day before our hearing, customarily when you call a hearing, you receive their testimony 3 or 4 days before the actual hearing itself. We received it about 6 hours before the hearing, and they announced that they were removing that rule for further consideration. We went ahead and held the hearing. I gave a little bit of my background growing up. My dad made sure that I had a full-time summertime job from the time I was 12 years old on. Went out, bucked bales, moved pipelines through a hayfield. Was on the back end of an old Ford tractor to be able to get from field to field and on a letter to be able to tell the tale. But you knew you had a real problem with the Department of Labor when you were expressing that, and you got to be able to explain what bucking bales means. We did in the hearing actually try and draw from them what was the motive behind this. What member of Congress, House or Senate, had called for this rule to be addressed? No one. It was simply organically growing out of that bureaucracy. I'm pleased to be able to report to you we were able to stop that rule for this year. We were able to push back. We had Senator Thune jump on us as well. The President and his administration announced that they were pulling this rule for the balance of the year. But what we have to be concerned about is the words, the balance of this year, meaning that we'll be back. This will take constant vigilance in terms of dealing with bureaucracy. Now, many times when you're talking about regulatory policy, extremists want to be able to come out and say you want to remove all regulations. Nobody's talking about that. I always like to be able to give the example at the beginning of the 1900s when we started building cars in this country. There were two automobiles in New York City. They ran into each other. So a stoplight is not a bad thing. We've got to have some common sense rules and regulations and laws that are going to be applicable to real life situations, but we need to make sure that Congress is fully engaged. We passed through the House of Representatives something called the RAINS Act to be able to address that, to be able to get Congress literally back in to part of that process of the rulemaking authority, to be able to address some of those rules and regulations. We're working and continue to work on legislation to actually pretty much mimic what we do here in the state of Colorado, with actual sunset legislation, which would require rules and regulations to be reviewed, cleaned up, and addressed on a point certain over a regular basis. To me, that's good common sense that we need to be having in Washington, D.C., rather than just allowing something to continue growing, because those impacts are definite on every individual. We were able also be able to protect Colorado water. You may have heard that the Forest Service was going to be putting out a requirement for all of the ski areas and collateral damage to our ranchers, people who had leased lands, public lands, and developed water rights, meaning they paid for them to develop those water rights as well. The National Forest Service wanted those to be signed over to the federal government. Very interesting to me when we brought them in and explained to them that that was actually taken. We have something in Colorado called priority waterway system. We have something in Colorado called private property rights. As a state of Colorado, we have rights as well. The federal government should not be crossing, and water is going to be one of them. We were able to hold that rule and let you know how quickly the bureaucracy can move. We found out about this potential rule on a Tuesday. The rule was going to go finally on Friday. We were able to get a subcommittee hearing held to be able to address this. They did hold up on the rule of this litigation, and we stand ready with legislation actually to be able to address that as well, to be able to protect Colorado's water. So these are some real areas that we've been able to have a real impact. Through our office, we've been able to put 5 pieces of legislation through the full House of Representatives. And I want to be able to share this with you. When we were in Pueblo meeting with senior citizens this morning, one gentleman said, just doesn't seem like anything is moving through Congress, that nothing is actually being done. I'm going to point the finger squarely at the United States Senate. We have 2 houses, the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. Every bill that the United States Senate has put forward and passed, and it's come over to the House, we have dealt with. We have bills stacked like cordwood in front of the United States Senate, waiting for action. 2 of those bills happen to be bills that I've sponsored. Put through a bill called Small Hydropower Electric Act. To be able to create jobs, to be able to address something that I think is important, and all of the above energy strategy literally for this country. What we found out when we were researching this bill is Bureau of Reclamation throughout the western United States to put in conduits, to put in pipelines, to be able to transport water. Well, we found, and by the way, I know here you don't have to explain it when you get back east. You do have to explain it. Conduits are ditches. And that's what we call them out in the west. To be able to put in these small hydroelectric units. And just in the state of Colorado, just in our state of Colorado, not including Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, west of the western states, just in Colorado, if we take full advantage of the bill that I was able to pass with bipartisan support, not only of the Natural Resources Committee, but out of the full House of Representatives as well, we can generate out of the ditches in Colorado and these pipelines as much electricity as the Northern Canyon did. That's potential. That's the opportunity. It is sitting on the doorstep of the United States Senate. Just about 2 weeks ago, we passed through a series of bills in terms of American energy policy. And I hope you join with me in this right now. You know, when we look at the world stage, we're hearing Syria is now starting to move biological chemicals with their army. We have the Iranians on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon. They have their Navy at sea, threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Libya is still in turmoil, just now holding an election, but nothing's been solidified yet. You have the Islamic Brotherhood that is taking control of the Egyptian government. Lebanon is having issues as well. The entire Middle East, where a lot of the world's energy comes from, is having some real challenges. So is it an appropriate time for the United States to create a real energy policy? To be able to develop American resources on American soil, to be able to put Americans back to work, to be able to create American energy certainty? I think it is. My portion of the bill called for all of the above. To be able to generate an energy for this nation through wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, and our traditional sources as well, oil shale, oil, gas, coal. It must be all of those mixes being able to come together. We can do it responsibly, and we can create energy certainty literally for this country. And it's important simply when we turn on our lights and we continue to see our electric bills go up. When we go down, and I've talked to young people and senior citizens that aren't filling up their gas tank. They're only putting in so many gallons because they've still got to be able to buy groceries. They still have to be able to make that mortgage payment as well. So when we create that energy certainty here in the United States, I think we're going to be able to create a winner. Very supportive of seeing the Keystone Pipeline funds. This is 20,000 direct jobs that we can create right now, shovel-ready. No federal money is going to be required. We can get Americans back to work. And better than 100,000 collateral jobs that can literally be created in this nation. Energy can help lead us out of this recession, putting Americans back to work. It is time appropriate in the interest of this country to be able to achieve it. I think we need to spend just a little bit of time, and I'll invite your questions in, but we need to talk about national debt in this country very seriously. It is going to cripple and is crippling the United States of America. We are seeing our debt as a portion of gross domestic product approaching that of Greece. We're seeing the turmoil that's going on in Europe right now in regards to the euro. We need to have a common sense balance and approach. Paying down that debt, reducing the size of government, and empowering the American people with more of their resources to do what we do better than any people on the face of the earth, and that is innovate, create, and build. But we aren't going to be able to generate that out of Washington. We've never spent, not once, have we spent our way out of a recession with federal money. It comes from the hard work of the American people. We've got to be able to create those opportunities, to be able to pay down that debt. To that end, I voted for a budget. Not once, but twice we have passed a budget through the House of Representatives over the year and a half that I've been in Washington. We are still waiting for the United States Senate to pass a budget. They have to stand up and they have to get to work on behalf of the American people. It is that important. And I'll encourage every one of you, get a hold of our senators. Revisit. I know in the Bentonville Law, they've got some frustration as well. These bills need to be allowed to move forward and let the legislative process work. If you don't like it, kill it. If you find something of redeeming value, amend it and allow the process to work. There is a roadblock in Washington. It is called the United States Senate. We need to get this country moving and putting forward ideas to be able to address that. We recently actually voted to repeal again President's health care plan. There are better solutions. We can all embrace that concept. And that's what we all wanted to see the work done on, was affordability and accessibility. It was punitive to our senior citizens, stripping out $575 billion from Medicare. Here in Alamosa, in Del Norte, Monte Vista, Southport, out in the center, we're talking to senior citizens who are finding a tough time finding a doctor there that will take them. We're now seeing the Independent Payment Advisory Board that the President will appoint that is going to make decisions for senior citizens. I firmly believe that those decisions ought to be made between the patient, the doctor, and the family in the doctor's office, and not by bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. We're continuing to talk to small businesses that are afraid to hire, simply because they don't know what the real costs are going to be. The United States Chamber of Commerce said 74% of the respondents to a poll said the number one reason that they aren't hiring is because of the President's health care plan. We've got to have a sensible approach. We've got to make sure. We were just visiting in the car. Brenda, and I don't know wherever Brenda went. We were visiting with Brenda. I've got a brother with a pre-existing condition. He's had diabetes since he was 7 years old. He's 5.5 years older than I am. We've got to be able to address pre-existing conditions. We can all do that. If you want to keep your children on your health insurance plan until they're 26, what business is it of the government? Keep them on them. But let's address that affordability and accessibility. We have bills ready to go to actually be able to achieve. Being able to allow real competition to work, to talk about something the President wouldn't, and that's called real tort reform, which is one of the primary cost drivers that we're really seeing. Allowing businesses to be able to come together to form real groups to be able to negotiate even lower rates. Being able to incentivize you rather than punish you with an individual health care savings account, buying across those state lines. These are ideas that let free market systems work. Free markets, they aren't perfect, but they've made us the freest, richest, and greatest nation in the world. We need to be encouraged. So with that, I'll close. I'll invite your questions. Again, thank you all for